Okay, I've received this opening to channel book by Sanaya Roman and Duane Packer. And as I said in an earlier address, they are the channels for entities called Orin and DaBen, respectively. And I'm this far into the book. This is the part where it gets into exercises for how to channel. And you'll remember, if you're following all this stuff, one of the reasons I jumped on this Michal Levin book really quick was because Matthew Lewin learned how to channel subsequent to reading this, so I figured it might be a great place to start. And I'm in the middle of its preliminary exercises, or its first few exercises. And I don't know, they seem great and everything, but more along the lines of traditional visualization and meditation kinds of things with chakras that, I don't know, for some reason at this point where I'm at, they just don't really seem to work with me. For those of you that don't know, I'm trying to kind of find my way through this channeling thing and see find my way, I guess is a great way to say it. In my reading that I got a year ago from Douglas Cottrell, he pointed out that I have the innate ability to channel, or at least I guess I should say a good innate ability to channel, since there's obviously tons of people that are able to do this at various levels. And he did make a statement in there that he said, when I asked the question, I was limiting the mind. He said, when you ask the question, you limit the mind. And that was in regard to asking about how many other channels were out there, or whether the deep trance channels were right. Thinking about deep trance channels, and that kind of resonates with some of the things I've run into here that harken back to things I've read with Andrew Jackson Davis. When you read Davis's stuff, you get this idea that there's this spectrum of channeling, that it's not just one or two things. It's not just mediumship, conscious trance, deep trance, that there's really a whole continuum and different levels you can kind of distinguish based upon, at different points, there are things you are able to perceive or able to do, or ways in which you're not as aware of the environment around you, or things. So you can draw lines into categories. And I think Davis at some point said there was 10, and I've heard different numbers from different people, but that's probably just a characteristic of drawing lines. But anyway, so some initial thoughts here, perceptions. First of all, I can kind of see, when I was led like a week ago or so to look at this website again. I'd run across it before, a little bit before that. I can, if it really was a guiding from my higher self, which is quite possible, I have no problem believing that. If it really was, well, I can see why. Because these seem to be some real gems, these two channels for Orin and DaBen, and especially fascinating is back in here somewhere, they've got their story about how, for each one of them, about how they kind of started to channel, what got them going, and the quality of information is first rate. Throughout the book, they clearly denote which text is channeled, which text is basically from the authors consciously. Everything that's channeled is in italics, so you're never in a doubt, and everything's clearly labeled. And it seems to be about half and half of the book is channeled information, and then information where they stick in a word edgewise here or there. But it all seems to be completely first rate. I mean, I've learned a lot already. This is clearer. This is clearer than the Betty book, for example, and it approaches things from the direction the Betty book did, which I guess makes sense. I mean, this lady started with like an Ouija board. That's the same way that Stuart Edward White and Betty and a bunch of others started out, and Betty being the one that the higher guides are immediately drawn to in that session. Again, what I've heard elsewhere from at least a couple of different celestial entities and from a bunch of other people, of course, that Ouija boards are not really to be recommended, nor is automatic writing necessarily, because those are typical ways where lower spirits, which I guess would be people like us that kind of get stuck right after we die, right here in the astral plane, right around the earth, and never really move on because the people are too ignorant or they're not interested in things elevated or religious or whatever. So normally that's a good reason to stay away from those kinds of things, but everybody's different, everybody has their own story, and in the cases of these two individuals, it turned out to be a very good thing. I mean, quickly the entities moved them away from the Ouija board and onto other things. In the case of the Betty book, it was automatic writing and then channeling. I think in Sanaya Roman's case, it was straight to channeling, but she had been told by another channel that she was capable of doing it, so she was kind of prepped in a sense, I guess. But so their descriptions of the process really ring true with the Betty book, and that's about the only other halfway comprehensive. It's kind of, the Betty book's kind of scatterbrained, but it's still a halfway comprehensive outlay of step-by-step process with getting in touch with the realms beyond from somebody who had basically zero experience to begin with. And again, you have the same type of thing here, different individual, very much more lucid, I think is the term, very clear, very straightforward, much easier to understand, and far and away the best book I've ever run across, describing the whole spectrum of what types of things are possible, types of entities you can interact with, and why there's a limit to the type of entity you can interact with, and why certain ones might be drawn to you, and just tons of pointers from both the channeled entities and both the channels themselves about the process and how to get started, what to look for, the good things to try, not to try. Great respect for how it's different for everyone, and suggestions to really try things on your own and play around with it, enjoy it. Just hands down fantastic stuff. So at this point, I would just highly recommend anything you can get your hands on from Sanaya Roman and Duane Packer, the Orin and DaBen website. They just have a ton of materials. They've been doing this stuff since the 80s. And a lot of it's kind of pricey, so just whatever. If you're really rich or really have some money set aside for devoting to this stuff, I think it would be a great place for your tithing or prosperity type money to just spend a few months and funnel it straight there and get some of these terrific works they have on CD and the books and whatnot. And if you're interested in starting to channel or trying it or getting into it or heading that direction or just want to know more what it's about, just a fabulous book. Definitely this should be the first place you look. This should be the first thing you check out. Not to diss Michal Levin, because while I read this, I'm putting together things Michal Levin said. It all kind of builds. I'm sure it was no accident that I'm led to each one of these works as I am. So one exercise, basically their method that I've started with so far is to start out with relaxation, which is basically straight from your textbook hypnotism. So that book on Hypnosis for Beginners by, I can't remember the guy's name right off, but I've talked about it before. It's called Hypnosis for Beginners by this famous hypnotist. And he's also got a book called Psychic Development for Beginners. I'm sure that second book would be great to check out. I definitely plan on it at some point. But the Hypnosis for Beginners has some great stuff on the basics of relaxation, getting yourself into a mild state of trance, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of like a first step. They give you the same types of pointers for how to do that. But in their case, you're not reclining. They basically say to just get comfortable sitting up somewhere, either just on the floor or in some kind of straight back chair or chair or whatever. And then they start working on focus, trying to get you to, at least for 5 minutes, to be able to focus on one thing. And they have a number of exercises to do that. I think the first one is to think about some improved trait you'd like to have. Like in my case, if I'd like to be more grateful, according to like the cultural reading and some of the advice he gave me, have more gratitude and what that would be like, or just be completely full of joy in the sense that great things are just right around the corner, which they really are, but to really be filled with that, and how that would change your life, how it would change with how you interact with other people. Just kind of jam on that idea and stay on that idea for 5 minutes, which I think is a great first exercise, because it's a good thing to visualize, number one, but also it gives you a kind of area to play around in without having to think about just one thing for an entire 5 minutes. And so you start with that, and then they have some other things like visualize just or just look at like a flower or a crystal or some object and really pay attention to it for 5 minutes. And the book on visualization in the mind's eye by Mike and Nancy Samuels had this same type of exercises. I'm sure that's another terrific book on the whole process of visualization and focus, which is another book I'd like to get my hands on at some point, not just keep checking it out from libraries. But anyway, so then the next they have a couple different things you can try, or maybe the second part of either focusing on an object or another thing you could try. They said, what was this? And it really resonated with me, this exercise, that you imagine that you're sitting across from a advanced entity, a higher guide or higher entity or whatever they call it. So it could be your higher self or one of these higher spiritual entities that are ready to channel. And so you just imagine, imagination being the gateway to higher consciousness and to psychic perception or whatever, as I've learned. And I'm fully confident that's the truth, even at this early stage. But anyway, so you just imagine that you're just sitting across from this advanced entity and just looking into his or her eyes, and both of you are sitting there trying to deepen this connection, firm up this connection between you, see through the veil at each other, bridge the gap, and just focus on that, jam on that for 5 minutes. Just see how long you can. Imagine you're holding the entity's gaze and you think about this. If there really is this Orin guy out there that's able to spin off a piece of his consciousness and help you whenever you ask, and if there are, of course, as the Rancha Teaching Mission and others say, this spirit team with you consisting of your guardian and seraphim, your higher self, and then the teacher that has stepped up and volunteered for every single person that will ask for one, apparently, a new teacher from the just recently, this new age we're apparently moving into. There's apparently all these extra entities have come to just give that little extra boost of help to someone, anyone asks for it, and then anyone else on your spirit team that's there for a lot of us, most of us. There's probably several others, prominent figures. So imagine, there definitely, probably is, and these entities are going to be aware that you're reading this book, that you're trying this exercise. So when you're imagining it, they're probably there. It's probably real. They're probably. It's just a question of how good is your connection, because that imagination, when you sit there and imagine that is going to be perception in a sense, in a very real sense, I think, and so. What an exciting exercise, because it's almost like you're there already. You're there making contact with that entity, which that's really the whole goal of my mind is to contact your higher self or those members of your spirit team. So that's what I've been really doing is whenever I get a chance to try that exercise and try that visualization and see how long I can take it and keep doing it, because I think it's really happening. When you're imagining doing that, I think you're really doing that, and of course that's going to lay the groundwork for being able to do this channeling. So I'll give you much more information on the book, I'm sure, as I go through it, but definitely worth checking out. Share and enjoy.